Hello. So, it's been a little while since I've personally recorded, but it is time for a return. And this time I mean it. I've tried to do this for 2 seasons now, but for the third one, we're gonna be bringing it back. This is Global Serene Cup, or GSC Season 4. So, I've been a part of GSC for the first 3 seasons, but I've only actually uploaded my first season, and that was my first singles draft back. Season 2 I didn't upload due to me taking a break from uploading in general. Season 3 I didn't upload, I actually uploaded my draft. That's been taken down now, because there was no reason to keep it up. I did awfully in GSC Season 3, and all it was every week was me just getting annoyed. So I thought there's no point in me actually uploading any of these games, because it's just going to be... It was 8 weeks long, and it was low tier, and I just got annoyed for 6 of the 8 weeks. Especially the first week. The first week was especially bad, because it was an hour-and-a-half long match, and I got 6-0'd anyway. So I was, like, really upset. So I was like, there's no point in me uploading any of these games, because, like, I was 0-5 at week 5, so... Like, going into week 6, I was like, I'm not bothering. There was no point, so... Yeah, that's why, you know, we haven't really seen GSC since Season 1, but this time, we are back. So... It's, you know, things are a bit different, but some things have also stayed the same. So, the format is still pretty much as it was, since last time we actually saw it properly. You know, it's not deck singles, no legacy moves, all that good stuff. I think there's no shadow tag, so Gothitelle isn't, like, a problem, which is cool. And no one drafted Dug Trio, so there's no real trapping going on, which is, you know, cool. Unlike Season 1, the point total is capped at 110, and you still have to get 10 to 12 Pokemon. So I was like, well, I'm getting 10. Any draft I've been into that has a 110 point total, I've always gone with 10 Pokemon. Just because I feel like that still gives a reasonable amount of a balanced draft. So that's what I end up like kind of going into this plan with. Additionally, on how the divisions are, that's the word I was looking for. The divisions are based on skill. So that is just like Season 1. Season 1 we joined, and we joined in the lowest division because we were a new player. Season 2 it was Season 2 and Season 3 it was just completely random. Unlike divisions, like it was just like mixed bags. In Season 4 they've gone back to skill-based divisions. And we've gone from the lowest division to the highest division. Granted, there's only 2 on, like, Season 1's 3 divisions. But there's still 2 divisions, and we're in the upper division. Apparently we have proved ourselves to be a good enough player to be in the upper division now. So we're playing with the top dogs. I'm scared. So, a couple of the people that we've seen in GSC previously that we played, I think Wally, Sam that we saw in SXOC, Rock Hands. I don't think you didn't see them in Season 1. But Wally was actually someone who also joined at the same time as me, and started in Crescent, and we both have just been like consistently playing since, and both have apparently proven ourselves. Rock Hands I'm just mentioning because they 6-0'd me with Orlando T, and is pretty much the reason why I started just like instinctively just drafting ground immunities. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, as for the draft itself, the draft went under, for my draft specifically, it went under a couple different iterations, but we'll talk about those from when they get there. But I also had a very important pick. I had the first pick. Now, I had a lot of cool ideas that I really wanted to go into this with, but I had first pick. So, since it's been about a year since GSC Season 1, I made my first pick back to the first singles draft. We got it back then in Season 1, so we're gonna get it now. And it's not often you do get to pick it, to be fair, because it goes really early normally. Our first pick of the draft was Dragapult. Dragapult, along with actually a couple of other Pokemon, actually ended up getting their own extra tier. Normally in point-based drafts like this, where Pokemon are separated into tiers based on points and you pick from the points instead of having to go through like certain tier-based systems, normally the point system caps out at 18 points. But a few leagues that I have seen have started implementing a 19th point tier, and Dragapult is one of the 4 Pokemon that actually gets to be put into that tier. The other 3 are Urshifu Single Strike, Mew, and Mega-Glade. Urshifu Single Strike because it's an incredibly hard Pokemon to deal with, and doesn't have many easy switch-ins to. Mega-Glade, similar deal, except it's faster and can Swords Dance, but doesn't have the ability to pivot, and then Mew can just do anything, so yeah. Out of those 4, the only other one I would have actually considered picking would have been Mega-Glade. I'm not a fan of Urshifu, and I think Mew is incredibly difficult to use. So, I've used Mew a couple times, and I'm like, I only pick Mew when I actually just don't know what to do. So, however, Dragapult is an incredibly good Pokemon. That's the Pokemon we're here to talk about. And at least now, unlike back then, I actually, like back in Season 1, I went back and listened to my Season 1 draft, and I was like, yeah, you know, I think Dragapult's like going to be a really good Dragon Dance sweeper, and, you know, it's kind of what I prefer it for. You know, it's like special stuff is okay, but, you know, it kind of like, it trades off the special for the, like, stuff like that. It doesn't matter. I now know how Dragapult works, right? So here what you do, right, is every week you give it a choice specs and you run Shadow Ball and you win the game. That's it. That's actually how Dragapult's supposed to be used. I didn't know this, because I was like, that's a 100 base special attack, who cares? Turns out Ghost is a really spammable stab. Especially if it actually has coverage. Unlike Spectre, that has no coverage to speak of, Dragapult actually has coverage. So it can drop Specs Dracos as well. And they hurt. Despite coming off of base 100 special attack. Ghost itself is a hard type to switch into. There's only 2 types that actually will deal with it, and that's Dark and Normal. So, you know, that's the thing, but neither of those necessarily want to take Dracos either. So, you know, that's why Dragapult's not an easy Pokemon to deal with. Because, you know, it can actually hit things on, not with the Ghost moves. Alongside that, it gets the, you know, the coverage of Water, Fire, and Electric. I forgot it got Thunderbolt, to be honest. Just because it's not really something you see too consistently, but, you know, Scald or Hydro Pump with Fire Blast or Flamethrower, and, you know, Thunder/Thunderbolt, more so Thunderbolt there. Or Surf, actually, probably more so. But yeah, just Specs Dragapult hits insanely hard. And due to its insanely high speed, which I believe, out of all the teams drafted, I think there is actually only one person with a Pokemon faster than me, and that is the person with Zeraora, because Zeraora has 1 more base speed than Dragapult. No Mega Sceptile was drafted, I don't believe. No Mega Aero was drafted, I believe. I think someone drafted Ninjask. And that's it. So there are 2 people in the entire league with a Pokemon faster than me. And there's 12 people in this league, or in this division, so yeah, Dragapult, it hits incredibly hard with choice specs, and has obviously the ability to pivot out with U-turn as well. On top of that, it's actually got really nice abilities. Chaos Body's okay, but Clear Body and Infiltrator are really nice, especially like, because Infiltrator just means there's no nonsense going on. People can't just sub up and like try and play around the Dragapult. It's like, cool, you want to sub up? Be my guest. I'm just gonna Draco through it anyway. It doesn't matter. So, like, for example, like, Subri's Kyurem, is, like, a pretty common set. You can't do that to Dragapult, because it's just gonna Draco you through it and kill you, so, you know, the Kyurem's pretty much gonna have to be stuck off. Literally due to this thing is, like, great coverage, and actually being able to hit relatively hard. It's a really nice cleaner. On top of that, it can be used in a relatively good mid-game term. These are sets that people know, because Dragon Ball is considered the best Pokemon in Draft. Due to its incredible type, it's got a great typing, great offensive typing, pretty good defensive typing as well, to be fair. Ability to pivot, and it has a multiple of very viable sets, another one of which consists of Hexpult. Hexpult, using Hex alongside either Will-O-Wisp, or I believe it gets Thunder Wave as well. Believe. If you want to work Showdown, please. Oh, that's just me being an idiot. Yeah, Thunder Wave as well. So, Thunder Wave or Will-O-Wisp. Combining that with Hex gives you an even more powerful special Ghost move that, once again, people can't switch in on. Like, the main downside of Dragon Ball on the physical side is the fact that it has to rely on Phantom Force. So being able to just spam the Ghost Stab that's pretty spammable as a type, you know, you have another 5 Pokemon in the team that you're bringing to take down the answer to Dragon Ball, and if so, you know, Dragon Ball just kind of goes in. At this point, like, with like, Hex Dragon Ball, it looks more something like Sub-Hex, one of the status moves, and then like a Dragon move, like a Dragon Pulse, or a coverage move of some kind. And just use that incredibly good base speed to keep getting subs up, and just using the power of Hex. Very rare that Hex as a move actually gets to be used, but Dragon Ball is one of the few Pokemon that can really make it work. And then obviously, what I originally thought it was good for, physical is not out of the question. I've actually played against a banded Dragon Ball. Just because, like, if you need the Dragon Stab, banded Dragon Darts are gonna hurt. Because Dragon Darts hits really hard. You do have to rely on Phantom Force for the Ghost Stab, which is the lesser good of the 2 stabs, but also banded U-turns. It's mostly just like, if you want the banded Dragon Darts, it's really nice, and you have the option to go Clear Body to make it so you can't be intimidated from things like Landorus or Cineroar. I'm naming VGC Pokemon here. But Intimidate is less common in singles than in doubles, but you get the idea. Like, you can't be intimidated down to try and, like, make up for the fact of the damage output. So generally, special is actually more preferred on Dragon Ball, despite what the stats would say. It's kind of like Tapu Koko in that regard. Tapu Koko is very similar, where it's got more attack than special, but you tend to run it more special anyway, because the coverage is there. Because I guess in a similar way, Tapu Koko has like no physical fairy moves, and you want to use fairy moves with it as well. So kind of similar in that regard. Whereas like with Dragon Ball, you can't really use ghost moves on the physical side despite having the better attack. But hey, you can still Dragon Dance with it, and if you do get a Dragon Dance up, and your opponent has no resist to Dragon, the game is probably over, because yeah, like, nothing's outspeeding you. People are going to be bringing Scarfers against Dragon Ball because they have to. They have to find a way to revenge kill this thing, because otherwise it gets too out of hand. Dragon Ball really punishes slow teams because of U-turn. U-turn makes a big deal on a Pokemon this fast to get into the bulkier pieces of the team that can be rounded out from there. So it's an incredible good Pokemon. Not easy to use properly. I think that's something very, very clear to say. Not easy to use properly. You can You can slap Spec Shadow Ball on every week and probably do fine. But to get the most out of Dragon Ball, you have to know how to use it well. And I'm hoping to make that adjustment. And now that I actually know what I'm doing in Singles Draft. So, with Dragon Ball, though, there is a fairly standard build around. So I kind of made a plan around that. As soon as I knew I was first in draft, I made a plan around Dragon Ball. So I got my first pick, I got my Dragon Ball, and then the plan immediately went to pot. Because I planned on getting Heatran, and Heatran went like pick 5 the whole draft. So I had to radically change my plan. And I was struggling, because I really wanted Heatran as my Steel type. But I had to make a lot of adjustments, and I had to pretty much entirely flip my plan on its head. Due to the mistake I made last time with Dragon Ball was I was really weak to Fairy. and so I wanted to make sure that I had really good answers to fairy types. So I wanted to make sure I had a steel type that I was really comfortable using. I also wanted to make sure it would set up rocks, but also not really lose me too much momentum. With Dragon Ball, my initial idea was I wanted to make sure I had momentum as much as possible, and use more of my bulkier playstyle, because I tend to like my bulk, if you see me around, but also being able to be bulky and pivot around into the right pieces, and not lose too much momentum. So I didn't want a steel type that was just going to like stop dead in its tracks. Heatran was like the closest I could get away with, because instead of like stopping dead in its tracks, it would just Magma Storm and keep people trapped in, so there was that. But instead I couldn't get Heatran, so I opted for a different steel type, and that steel type is Jirachi. I never thought I'd pick Jirachi twice, and especially willingly. Last time I picked Jirachi, it was literally the last good high tier Pokemon left. But this time I'm picking it because I want this to be my steel type. So the reason for Jirachi is mostly Stealth Rocks plus U-turn. I believe this is the only steel type in the game that gets this combination, which is pretty big. Jirachi is super versatile. It can do a lot, obviously. Like, Stealth Rocks and U-turn was a big reason why I wanted it. I wanted a steel type that did not lose me momentum. And in this team in general, it's gonna have to play more of a defensive role. Due to this being one of my main Stealth Rock users. But that being said, it does not... If you look at, like, just see how many moves this Pokemon gets, it is not short on just good moves. Offensive Jirachi is not to be messed around with. Serene Grace Iron Heads are a win condition, especially with a Scarf, because then you do outspeed everything. Even regardless of that, the base 100 speed is still pretty good. You can run it physical or special due to its incredible coverage, though generally more physical just because of Iron Head. You can status things, usually Thunder Wave if you're going to do it, which really helps slow things down. Obviously you've already got Dragon Ball to kind of have the higher speeds, but yeah. Wish as well, Wish was a big one. Wish meant like I could play this more of a... Yeah, I could actually make this my Wish Passer of the team. I did plan on picking up another Wish Passer anyway, just in case, but yeah. It gives the option to Wish and U-turn, making it actually a pretty good Wish Passer. Has just a ton of options on like both physical and special sides, and in terms of utility as well. There's just so many different things you can do with Jirachi, and I used it previously in OFC to relative success. Using it in a multitude of different ways, mostly between bulky / defensive and Scarf, because that's really what you do with Jirachi. But there's obviously there's options for things like Cosmic Power or Calm Mind. Both of those kinds of setup sets are very, very scary to play against, and if properly managed, can just win games on their own. So yeah, Jirachi is a very tough Pokemon to prep for, especially, again, for slower teams. A slower team will really struggle with Jirachi just because of, you know, Iron Head just winning the game. It does unfortunately share a Ghost and Dark weakness with Dragapult, but other than that, it's great at switching into the Fairies and the Ice types, or Ice-type moves, I guess, that want to hit Dragapult. And you can pivot between the two due to them both having U-turn. So you kind of got like bulky pivoting between the two, which is something I was really happy to have. Again, especially with Wish as well, being able to pivot out. And like I say, Jirachi's going to have to play more of a defensive role on C, which really sucks because I do like its ability to go offensive or defensive. But also, with how this draft ended up turning out, I think it can go on the offensive when it needs to. So, anyway, that is Jirachi. A Pokemon that I am happy to have back, but I do hate its stupid guts still. Serene Grace Iron Head flinching is dumb. It is a win condition, it is dumb, I do not like it, I hate it, it's stupid. But everything about it, I actually genuinely do like. Just Serene Grace Iron Head is dumb as hell. So, here we are. But, it's what we have to deal with when we pick Jirachi, so. Anyway, onto the third pick. Now, once I picked Dragapult, I was able to pick up pairs at the same time. Not actually something I like to do. I think I've said this a lot, or every time I do a draft, but I actually prefer kind of like not like at the wheel pick, because then I can kind of more make my picks based on what other people have. I couldn't really do that when I'm first pick, because I have to wait like 30 picks before it actually gets back to me, so I ended up just grabbing arguably the best pair with Dragapult, almost like a mandatory staple with Dragapult, and that is Mandibuzz. So I had drafted this with Dragapult before because people said it was good. I didn't really know, but obviously now I have more of an understanding of why this is. One of the best defensive checks and offensive checks to Dragapult are Dark types. Dark types can switch in on the Shadow Ball, not take too much damage, and be able to hit you back with a pretty strong move that is most likely to take you out. Especially since a lot of Dark types get Sucker Punch, and that can really ruin your day. That's where Mandibuzz comes in. Mandibuzz is one of the best defensive Dark types in the game. With access to Roost to keep itself healthy, Defog to keep hazards off your side of the field, because as you can see, we've already got 3 Pokemon with U-Turn. We don't really want to be taking too many Rock Sits. As well as just a lot of great utility in, and Whirlwind to stop setup, Knockoff, again, U-Turn, Brave Birds do reasonable damage, not great, but it's certainly nothing to scoff at. Foul Play for, super offensive threats, Taunt is really nice, Toxic. It really just puts a stop to a lot of things that would kind of threaten some of the other Pokemon in the team. Obviously, we've got already 2 Ghost and Dark weaknesses, and Mandibuzz is a great switch into both of those. It does share, unfortunately, the Ice and Fairy weak with Dragapult. But obviously, Jirachi is the stopgap between those. So, and Jirachi's weaknesses, other than the Ghost and Dark, are what the Fire and the Ground. Fire can be covered by Dragapult and easily get in, and the Ground is, Mandibuzz is immune to. So, Boots, Defog, defensive Mandibuzz is a mainstay, and it's pretty much going to be that kind of... It's not going to change in how that is used for pretty much all the season. Like, it is a defensive Pokemon. It doesn't really get the opportunity to change that. I like how I've got, like, literally the most standard moveset here, and for some reason Showdown's suggesting a bulky physical attacker. With that 65 attack, I'm not so sure. Overcoat's a nice ability, not too useful, but it's nice. Big Pex is honestly, like, sort of useful. It's useful for things like, what's it called, for, like, Galarian Zapdos, which is kind of funny. And Weak Armor if you want to do cute stuff, I guess. But mostly Overcoat, just because, it's generally useful. Just means you can't get Sleep Powdered or Spored, and you're immune to Hail and Sand. It's nothing special. Mandibuzz is nothing special, I would say. But it's an essential glue piece that is really important for this team that we would be struggling without. This is also our first piece of hazard removal, and for those who know me, I like my hazard removal, so having some at this point is quite nice. Obviously I plan on picking up much more than just this. So, but we've made a start at least, and obviously got a dedicated defensive piece. Jirachi can go offensive or defensive, and Dragapult can go offensive or offensive. But Mandibuzz is a dedicated defensive piece that will hopefully be a glue and backbone to this team. So, after this, once I knew I had to, make my changes to my plan, and at this point I did have a plan formulated, and it was drastically different to the first one I had. Obviously, before I was planning on getting Heatran. My plan for my round 2 and 3 pick were going to be Heatran and Mandibuzz instead. But things had to change. I had to radically change my plan, and it had to include Jirachi. And the sad thing about picking Jirachi was the fact that I wasn't able to pick up quite a staple Pokemon with that is, you know, very commonly seen in Dragapult compositions, and that is Mega Medicham. I didn't want dual Psychics, especially because I didn't really see myself being able to afford that sort of dual Psychic. You know, having three Ghost Weeks off the bat meant that just any Ghost type could come. Gengar, Spectria, and things of that, like, even things like Miss Magus would give me trouble. So I was like, I can't do that. So I had to pick a different fighting type. A strong fighting type is usually really liked. A strong fighting type or a strong, like, fairy type is quite nice to have a Dragapult. Again, it's offensively breaking the dark types that want to deal with it. And also, like, even some ice types, I guess. Fairies obviously can help as well, but, like, I felt like a strong fighting type would be the way to go. And there was a couple I was looking at, but one really stood out to me as something I thought that would have a pretty solid synergy, because I know it had solid synergy in doubles, to be honest, and I figured, yeah, let's go for it. So, against my better judgment, I ended up picking Terrakion. So, Terrakion's always a Pokemon that's really confused me. As in draft, at least since I've come back. Because ever since I've come back, it's been 16 points, and I genuinely don't know why. I was like, I think I saw it one time at 15 points, like early on when I was like looking around drafts. And then ever since it's been 16, and I don't know why. I genuinely don't know. It's really good. Terrakion's incredible. Terrakion actually does something for me that very few of the Pokemon would actually have done. And that is actually giving me an upper speed. One issue with Dragapult comps that I always see, is an incredibly large speed gap. You know, if I was to pick Mega Medicham instead of Terrakion, I would have had a very standard 42 point gap between speeds. And there's a lot of Pokemon that go between 100 base speed of Mega Medicham, which I would have, instead I've actually got Jirachi, which is 100 base speed. And then the 142 base speed, you know, premier speed Dragapult. You know, that's all the base 130 speeds, things like Crobat and Tapu Koko. That's the only two I can think of on the top of my head. But, you know, then there's things like Weavile and base 120 speeds, and 119s, things like Inteleon and Cinderace and Raikou at 115 speed, and all the base 110 speeds, things like the Latios and Latias. There's so many speeds you miss out on. And that means that a lot of those can actually just, like, go modest or adamant and really take advantage of your bulk. Terrakion lets you stop that. Latias, their base 110 speed, they do outspeed Terrakion, but they've got to go max speed, because if they don't, they get outsped. So, it gives me that little bit extra speed that some of the Dragapult teams that I have seen in the past, because every league has a Dragapult team. It's just what happens. This gives me slight edge. Bit of a rant, but, you know, like, Dragapult teams are the most consistent teams. You will always see a Dragapult team in a draft. So, I've seen a ton of Dragapult teams. And this is it was one of the biggest mistakes I always see. And even I'm bad for my speeds, and we know this. You saw my UBL Season 5 team, like, I had, like, my top end speeds were, like, going in, like, Charizard X into Virizion into Azelf. Like, I'm notoriously bad for my speeds. It feels like, anyway. Even in GSC Season 2, I think, like, I went, like, Domanitan into Taunty into Alecki. It was wild. 95 into 121 into 200. Yeah, anyway. But this speed I think is really good. But Terrakion does more than just be fast. It has 129 attack. And that's pretty high. Terrakion also has an incredibly dangerous stab combination. A Pokemon that I have actually used quite a bit in the past is Mega Aerodactyl. And Mega Aerodactyl... Has it been half an hour already? My music is oh my goodness, this is going to take a lot longer than I thought. Alright, well, I had a backup song, but I might need another. Terrakion, what was I saying? Mega Aerodactyl. Mega Aerodactyl is another top tier rock type that I've used in the past. It is really fast, actually. And when I found out, what I realized was Stone Age plus Earthquake obviously is an incredibly good combination, right? But does have switch-ins. But you throw one extra stab combination in there, and that can really mess with a lot of Pokemon. Mega Aerodactyl is a Pokemon I've used a couple times, and throwing a flying stab into that really can make your switch-ins to Stone Age Earthquake a very dangerous combination. Just that much harder, and Terrakion does that very well. It's got close combat. That's not close combat. I'm never using special Terrakion. I am sorry. Close combats from this thing hurt a lot. So finding really good switch-ins to this thing is not easy. On top of that, it gets reasonable coverage. Notably to hit the fairy types that may want to switch into those close combats in Iron Head or Poison Jab. Mega Horde for grass types, which is actually quite relevant with this Pokemon. Just because, you know, like, it can switch into the Earthquakes and it switches into most hits neutrally. But also, I don't think it gets anything weird down here, right? It doesn't get anything super crazy. Small Strike's kind of interesting. Oh, yeah, so never mind. Nothing really too crazy down here. Yeah. One of the main things, though, I guess Xenobot's nice too. One of the main things with Terrakion that over the fighting types, this top end especially don't really get, it's Swords Dance. One Swords Dance with Terrakion and the game can just end. Terrakion with Swords Dance will clean games like nobody's business, and it gets out of hand too quickly. Close combats then start shredding teams, along with Stone Edge and Earthquake. Granted, I have to hit the Stone Edges. And just, they shred. Alongside that, obviously, Choice Band as well. Very good item for Terrakion. Usually it's like Choice Band or Life Orb. Even Scarf in some cases, just because, like, then you will just outspeed teams. So, I guess even Rock Polish sets, really. The thing can set Stealth Rocks. Not really a great Stealth Rocker, because you don't really want to waste a turn with Terrakion setting Stealth Rocks, but if you've got to bring Stealth Rocks, but you cannot fit it onto anything else, like, you know, say, I cannot bring anything else on my team that can set Stealth Rocks, and I need, like, Scarf Jirachi specifically, then Terrakion can set Stealth Rocks. It's not going to be doing it very often, if at all, but it is there. It's an option. So, really, nothing too crazy about Terrakion. Swords Dance is a crazy set. Bandit is crazy. Just any Swords Dance set, honestly, can just win games. And this is going to be one of the main setup sweepers of the team as a result. Because, oh boy, people do not want to just mess around Terrakion. Another thing about Terrakion that I relatively like, a Pokemon I was considering was actually Infernape. But Terrakion's bulk is actually relatively solid, like 91 HP and 90 on defenses. Infinite that I was considering has like 74 HP and 71 on both defenses, which is significantly lower. So, I felt like Terrakion was a really solid Pokemon overall to kind of be my really offensive breaking fighting type to help clean the way for Dragapult. And the last fun incidental synergy is the fact that it gets justified. So if you know, they do go for a Dark type move, and it happens to hit into Terrakion, then oh boy, things are gonna get bad real quick. So, anyway, that is Terrakion. After this, with what my plan was looking at, I knew I needed another good Stealth Rocker. Obviously, we have Jirachi and Terrakion to an extent, but I wanted something else that I knew I could bring to matches and set Stealth Rocks with. If Jirachi needed to do something else, and Terrakion is gonna, you know, actually do something useful instead of setting Stealth Rocks, I wanted something else I could confidently bring to the match and set Stealth Rocks with. So, we've already got a Psychic type, and a Steel type, and a Rock type. Those are three of the main types that set Stealth Rocks. But we're missing one of those, and that's Ground. So we looked at a Ground type, and it had to be cheap. We had to go cheap on this button, because these 4 cost a lot. Dragapult was 19 points, Jirachi was 16 points, Terrakion was 16 points, and Mandibuzz was 13 points. So at this point, I'd used 64, I think it was, 64 of my 110 points, which means I had to at minimum get 6 more Pokemon to round out the 10 total. So I knew I had to kind of slim down my draft just a tad. I knew it was going to be more of a top-heavy draft, just that's the nature of drafts including Dragapult. That's just how Dragapult drafts tend to go, just because you're already picking an extremely expensive Pokemon, you want the right support for it. So I had to go lower tier on my ground type. I wanted a ground type that I was comfortable with that could set rocks. And this was a ground type I know goes all the time in draft, due to it being a very, very just solid ground type that can set rocks, and also doesn't exactly slouch on the damage either. It's actually a Pokemon I've previously drafted for this very reason, and that is Mudsdale. Now, unfortunately, Mudsdale kind of falls into the fact that, like, this is just a wall, and it will just stop, but at least it does damage. With stamina, getting defense boosts, and then being able to body press things, you don't really slack on damage output with Mudsdale. Alongside that, Stab Earthquakes do really good damage because, hello, that thing is about 125 attack. It kind of hits like a truck. So, you know, it's, got 4 less attack than Terrakion. So, the main downside, obviously, is that really low speed, and the kind of lesser good special defense, but the high base HP and 100 HP, as well as the 100 defense, really helps this thing be really bulky. It gets reasonable coverage. There's quite a few Pokemon that can very easily come on this thing, absolutely no problem. Things like Toxic can really help mitigate that. Smackdown honestly can help mitigate that quite easily, because of notably Corviknight, because obviously Corviknight sucks and I hate the stupid thing. But the reasonable coverage between rock, ground, and fighting sound familiar. As well as a bit of steel coverage and dark coverage here and there as well. Nothing too crazy, but the bulk on this thing really shines. It takes hits remarkably well. The main downside to it is it doesn't have its own form of recovery. It will have to rely on rest, or Wish Passing from Jirachi, so it has that option. It can honestly win some games on its own just by bulking up with Iron Defense and Body Pressing. Mudsdale, kind of like Mandibuzz, is more of a dedicated defensive piece that can set rocks. But for the most part, it's going to actually deal reasonable damage on its own as well, and certainly stop some teams in its tracks. I also knew I wanted a ground type. I've generally quite liked having a ground type because it means I have the option of using a ground type and then not getting Volt Switched all over my face. So, something I've quite liked. Other than that though, that is pretty much it for Mudsdale. Again, nothing too flashy, but a solid ground type that I knew would go. Going back up. A lot of people have picked their ground types at this point, but the few that hadn't, I knew were going to be looking at Mudsdale. So I was like, I'm going to take Mudsdale. For most other Pokemon in the draft, I have a backup for. Mudsdale isn't really one that I have a backup for, because otherwise I have to look at things around that price range. That it's things like Piloswine and Gligar, which I'm not really big fans of. So I went with the Mudsdale because I thought that was the one that I could rely on the most and comfortably bring to the most matches. So the draft went back up and down, and there were a couple types I saw that were going. Notably were water types. A lot of my backup water types were actually going during this time. Primarina went really early, and that was a Pokemon I was hoping to grab, but wasn't unfortunately able to. Vaporeon, that was originally going to be my water type. That ended up going. And even regular Blastoise as well. But we don't have a Mega, and regular Blastoise went. So for the second draft in a row, we're getting Mega Blastoise. I don't think the last time I used this thing I gave it proper justice, and so I want to go again. Mega Blastoise is a super scary water type. This beefs out the special attack of this team dramatically from what we've already seen. Most things on this team before this look like physical attackers, because of Dragapult and Jirachi and Terrakion and Mudsdale. Dragapult's more special, Jirachi can go either. The other three are definitely physical attackers, but Blastoise hits on the special side like nobody's business. Holy cow, does it hit hard. Mega Blastoise, with its incredible coverage, that dishes out impeccable damage. Because of the Mega Launcher ability, meaning things like Aura Sphere, Flash Cannon, Dark Pulse. I think those are the main ones, really. Water Pulse as well, for a stab. It does really, really good damage. And not an easy Pokemon to switch into, especially when you don't know what moves it's got. It will be generally quite bulky, and has the ability to be quite a defensive water type due to its stat, like 79 essentially base 80 HP, with 120 defense and 115 special defense. It takes hits really well. Similar to Mudsdale though, it does struggle with recovery. It doesn't have recovery outside of rest, which is unfortunate, but it can make quite good use of rest, just because it's so tanky. So it also is our second form of removal in Rapid Spin. Give me a second, I need to take a drink. I've been talking for like 45 minutes, jeez. It gives us another form of removal, which is really nice. Blastoise is also one of the Pokemon that can really make use of the Rapid Spin buff. I said this previously as well when I drafted my Blastoise. But I think the Rapid Spin buff is an insanely good buff. It's just not many Pokemon can use it to really good effect. Excadrill, that I previously drafted, that's the Pokemon that can really use it. Probably the best. But Mega Blastoise is definitely up there, because boosting Mega Blastoise's speed is very good. Because it's kind of just at that right speed tier. Where, let me just see, 280. So max speed Timid Blastoise is 1 point slower than max speed max speed Timid Dragapult. That's what you're dealing with. Once you get that Rapid Spin off, you are 1 point slower than max speed Dragapult, and we have Dragapult. So there's one person in the, I guess two with the Ninjas, that's gonna have a Pokemon that can outspeed this once it gets the Rapid Spin off, and you actually run speed investment. And then you're dealing with a monster. Again with that incredible coverage, but again it can play quite a defensive role due to its, good bulk and pure water typing being a really nice defensive typing. Has some really nice phasing options with both Haze and Roar and Dragon Tail. Shell Smash is banned for obvious reasons. If Rapid Spin is making this Pokemon good, Shell Smash makes it dummy busted. So it can either play offensive or defensive roles, and also is a Pokemon I wanted due to the fact it got Flip Turn. Originally my water type was going to be Vaporeon before I planned on picking up Jirachi. Jirachi kind of changed things, and I also was really struggling to actually find a Mega that I wanted, and Mega Blastoise was literally the only Mega I was considering, or the Mega Camerupt. So I was like, Mega Camerupt's not a very good Pokemon, Mega Blastoise is a good Pokemon, so I'm going to pick Mega Blastoise instead. And so Vaporeon unfortunately had to go to the side. But Mega Blastoise is a very, very scary Pokemon to go against, due to its, again, offensive coverage, while also having defensive potential. It's so hard to switch into properly, because it gets so many different options of what it can do. I have run Max Speed Blastoise. The first match of the first league I had this in, I ran Timid Max Speed Blastoise to outspeed Bulu and Okoip. So you know, I'm not afraid to go offensive and just destroy things with Blastoise, so yeah, it's a really scary Pokemon to go against, and I'm really happy to have it. And hopefully put in a shift with it, so. This, however, because of it being a bit more of an expensive water type, means I kind of need to slim down the points again. But thankfully, I knew Pokemon that I did want those on the cheaper side. Mudsdale was 8 points, that kind of put me, you know, it helped slim down a bit, but obviously jumping back up to Mega Blastoise certainly didn't help. So, the Pokemon I wanted next was something I wanted pretty much from the start. Once I'd actually made, it was on a, I don't know, like an alpha / beta plan. Then got changed. And then when I ended up having to rearrange the plan slightly, this is the Pokemon that immediately came back to my mind, and I was like, we're giving this thing a shot, because I did not do this thing justice the last time I used it. And it's also a callback to GSC Season 1. Say hello to my grass type of choice, Serena. Serena's a Pokemon I understand more now. And I still don't understand why this thing is only 8 points. This Pokemon is insane. So, again, looking at his stats, okay HP, pretty good defenses. You know, its defenses are almost on par with Jirachi, it's just not got the HP to back it up. And really the low speed is one of the few things holding this thing back, as well as not the most useful ability. But, you know, Queenly Majesty has its uses, that's for sure, especially because one of the most common sets on it that people actually run is Scarf. You give this thing a Scarf and then people can't priority you down, and you're at 120 attack. This thing hits like a truck. This thing has the same attack as Dragapult, and this thing's coverage is bonkers. I don't get why people don't use this thing more. I so often see this thing go undrafted and I don't know why. With Power Whip, with High Jump Kick, Knockoff, friggin' Triple Axle. Why does it get Triple Axle? It doesn't make any sense, but it makes it very, very good. And also, I think I forgot a couple in Layer Rough and the ability to U-turn. As well as, I think, it said Headbutt as well, actually has some utility as well. But, you know, it's another Pokemon that can pivot. This at this point is what? We've got Dragapult, Jirachi, Mandibuzz, Mega Blastoise, and Serena that can all pivot. And this was the focus that I wanted to have on the team. Being able to pivot between these different pieces that can perform many different roles. Some will lean in more offensive directions, some will lean in more defensive directions. But they are still going to be putting in a shift regardless of the role they're putting in. Speaking of, you know, different options for Serena, the one match in which I ended up using Serena was actually an Assault Vest Serena. Granted, this was more so to take on a Mega Swampert than anything, and that's why I'm kind of disappointed in myself that I didn't get to use this Pokemon more. Because all I did was use it for, you know, bopping a Mega Swampert, and that was it. But Serena gets a lot of other great things, notably it's a second Rapid Spinner. So this is three forms of removal. I don't know what I said before. Don't want to think about what I said before. 3 forms of removal. And double Rapid Spinners on Pokemon that don't just want a Rapid Spin for removal, because Serena has 6 less speed than Mega Blastoise, and Mega Blastoise is a pretty good speed to be at. Max Speed Serena with Jolly Nature and a Rapid Spin is going to be outspeeding base 130s like Tapu Koko. So, yeah, scary, scary Pokemon to give a speed boost to, especially with that great offensive attack and the, you know, insane coverage. You know, kind of like Mega Blastoise. So, but also can play more of a utility role. You know, sounding like Mega Blastoise a little bit. Epsic, this Pokemon actually has recovery. So this Pokemon can actually recover itself with Synthesis, and it gets aromatherapy. And what do you know? if we just take off knockoff here and we just put on U-turn, and this was the first Serena set I made. I just made a bulky defensive Serena set. Obviously, you take off the assault vest and you put on leftovers. But cool. Honestly, with this set, it was actually more likely in this day and age to be boots. Get in, U-turn, heal itself, aromatherapy anything away, get out. Or, you know, skip any of those steps and get out when you need to. And just... It makes it really good at just being a utility piece, because obviously, like I say, being able to heal itself means it can actually play more of a bulky role, and actually make use of those defensive stats. Again, like I say, the first thing I did was literally go max and HP and special defense, and just use it defensively with this kind of moveset. Again, bulky with AV to make use of that coverage, or just kind of playing it more of a defensive role. Taunt is really nice, Toxic's obviously really nice for certain Pokemon. I don't think really anything else to be noteworthy of. Dropkick is nice. I've used Lunge Buzzwole in the past, so there's no reason why I can't use a Dropkick on Serena as well to great effect, just because, like, it means you can take extra hits. And if you're going to take extra hits, that means you're more likely going to be killing the thing back trying to kill you. So... Serena, I think, is a criminally underrated Pokemon, especially in Draft. So I'm really happy to give this thing a go, and actually use it this time, so... Grass types was something I was seeing were going, and I thought, Serena's a Pokemon I technically have a backup for. Mega Blastoise at the time, when I picked it, I actually just didn't have a backup for. Mega Blastoise is the one I wanted, and all of my backups had gone. Serena was a Pokemon I technically had backups for, but it would have meant I had to kind of change some of the ways that I was drafting. And I didn't really want to do that, and Serena was a Pokemon I was really happy to pick up. So, it gave me an extra form of removal, which at this point I was really happy with, because I'm like 7 Pokemon in, and I would only have 2 forms of removal at this point. Serena gives me that 3rd form, which is really nice. So, from there, things had to take an unfortunate turn. Because this was the 2nd snipe I got hit on, and I was quite sad for it. I wanted Wheezing, and it went, and I was really upset. Wheezing would have given this team Toxic Spikes that I was really hoping for. So I had to evaluate what I was going to do from here. And so I decided that I should reevaluate my priorities for the team, and I think overall I made a good change, but that doesn't really become apparent until a little bit later. For now, I was able to pick up a Pokemon I did want, which was my electric type. I kind of looked at the electric types of choice, especially because I had to go low at this point, because I'd spent a lot of points already. At this point, since I was going for 10 Pokemon, I had 18 points left. So on average, that would be about 6 points per Pokemon. So I had to go low on my electric. But thankfully, there are a couple low tier Rotom forms. I've been on a Rotom kick lately. In fact, the last time I drafted a non-electric type an electric type that wasn't a Rotom form was GSC Season 2. I drafted a Lecky there. Ever since then, I've been on a Rotom kick. Rotom Heat in SXOC. Rotom Wash in UBL Season 5. And in OFC. Rotom Heat, I think again somewhere else. I can't remember. I've actually got Rotom Heat right now in UBL Season 6. I used Rotom Mow in Radical Resistance. I actually ended up picking Rotom Frost in GSC Season 3 when it was a low tier draft, and it was like a mid tier Rotom form. Can't remember if Rotom Mow was actually even legal in that. So I've been on Super Rotom Kick. And so I think I was like, okay, I want a low tier Rotom. Rotom Ghost, Rotom Fan, and Rotom Frost are the low tier Rotoms. Now, Rotom Ghost I immediately disregarded, notably because I have a Dragapult, and I'm like, I'm not picking Rotom Ghost. So it was between Fan and Frost. And the deciding factor was the one that was cheaper, so I picked Rotom Fan. So Now, both Fatra and Snom, two people I've, kind of talked with a lot about draft, have both been telling me for ages that Rotom Fan is actually a good Pokemon. At least for the price that it is normally at, and I'm hoping they can prove me wrong, prove me right here, or prove themselves right here, prove me wrong, because I've not really regarded Rotom Fan as that great in the past. But it has a lot of merits going for it. First of all, Electric Flying is actually a really good typing. There's a reason why Zapdos is good. It just doesn't have an ability, which is unfortunate. But to be fair, Zapdos doesn't really have too much of an ability. Like, it's pretty much relying on Static. Which, granted, Static does win games 30% of the time, but 70% of the time it does nothing. It's just this time, 100% of the time, it does nothing. So, but it actually gets an actual flying stab, unlike Zapdos having to rely on Hurricanes. So, you have your Air Slash, you have your Volt Switch, which is already just great. It has Pseudo Recovery and Pain Split, it can Will-O-Wisp, it can T-Wave, it can Defog, which was a big one, because I knew I wanted more Defog, I knew I wanted more Hazard Removal, and so Rotom was Rotom's a Pokemon I'm really comfortable running Defog on. It's got to run Root Boots, kind of like Rotom Heat. Rotom Heat has no problem running Boots, so Rotom Fan, I feel like it's had no problem either. Also has the ability to go on the offensive. Scarf Rotom Fan is something that's actually fairly common. It doesn't really have a way to kind of check Pokemon that would normally try and Volt Switch in on it, which is kind of one of the downsides to it. But it has a very consistent stab instead, in Air Slash, so I think that's really cool. I'm hoping that I can be proven wrong on Rotom Fan. Its stats are incredible for a low tier Pokemon, and it has Pseudo Recovery and Pain Split. So I'm really hoping I can be proven wrong on Rotom Fan. And again, I've been on a Rotom kick, so like, sue me. Oh dear, excuse me. We've been recording for almost an hour, so yeah. Yeah. Didn't expect this to go so long, but here we are. So Rotom Fan, again, good defensive potential, good offensive potential, kind of a theme of the team, and theme of my drafting style in general. I like quite versatile Pokemon, so. Next up, Rotom Fan was also something I wanted pretty much from the start, actually. I can't really think of a point at which I didn't want Rotom Fan. Other than, like, I was considering Rotom Frost, but I just, at this point, I did not have the points for Rotom Frost, so. This was a big turning point, though, because I originally wanted a reasonable Fairy type. I was actually considering, at this point, Alcremie as my Fairy type. But once I lost Weezing, I knew I couldn't go for it, because I thought, if I pick this, I'm not going to have a good enough answer to Fairies if I pick it. So, I ended up picking a lower tier Fairy, and having to make up for the loss of Weezing elsewhere. And boy did we go low. But it is a Pokemon that I knew would also go. This is a Pokemon that very consistently goes in drafts, due to it just very solidly just being a good low tier Pokemon, to help round out drafts. I wanted to grab it early in the sense that, like, we're going into round 9 and people are going to be trying to fill out the drafts. Because I was able to go first, I was able to actually round out my draft a little bit quicker. So, I ended up picking Clefairy. So I looked at how good this thing handled Urshifu, because that's my kind of baseline. And it handles Urshifu relatively well. About as well as any other fairy will. It's got to run an Eviolite, and that's really it. It doesn't get access to Unaware, but it still gets access to Magic Guard, so it can't be Toxic worn down. It doesn't really have the offensive capability that Clefable does, but Clefable is an incredibly good Pokemon, and Clefairy kind of does a lot of what it would do otherwise. The defensive capabilities are still there. It can Stealth Rock, it can Wish, it can Teleport, but I believe you actually have to run I believe you have to run a friend guard for it. I will have to double check that. There we go. More music. So I'll have to double check how, because teleport's a older move and it can have some mismatching compatibility issues, I've heard. So I'll have to double check how that works. But I believe it, regardless, I believe it gets Baton Pass. Yeah, it gets Baton Pass and it's really slow, so it's likely going to be moving last anyway. So even if it doesn't get teleport, it gets Baton Pass. So it's not the end of the world. And again, this is a Pokemon that both Fat Rat and Snom have tried to convince me is actually good. So it was only 2 points, and that's actually lower than I've seen it in the past. I've seen it sometimes even go up to as many as 4 points. Usually, like 2 to 4 is usually the range I see it at. So it's on the cheaper side. So we can set Stealth Rocks again, another reliable Stealth Rocker. I'm not sure how many times I'm going to be bringing Clefairy, to be honest. And again, it doesn't really have the damage, but what it does have is, again, we've kind of glossed over it, Knockoff and Seismic Toss, giving it reliable damage. 100 points of damage is nothing to scoff at. You know, most sweepers aren't going to be able to take 3. Along with Stealth Rock Strip that the Pokemon itself can set up, and reliable recovery in Wish, and more importantly, Soft Boiled, wherever it is, or Moonlight. But I believe it gets Soft Boiled. S. Can't remember my alphabet apparently. There we go, Soft Boiled. It can keep itself healthy. So it's a secondary Wish Passer if it needs to be. Again, it can Baton Pass for that pivoting to get into Pokemon safely. Stealth Rocks, Wish, Baton Pass, +1. Very viable moveset for it. And with the Eviolite, you know, doubling those defenses, it actually makes it pretty reasonably bulky. I've recently used Porygon, and like that showed me that just like certain Pokemon could be quite bulky if you invest in them properly. The Porygon was definitely a bit different. This Porygon actually dealt really good damage as well. But Clefairy is a Fairy type instead, and can actually set Stealth Rocks. So I figured getting Clefairy, it's my Fairy, which is unfortunate, but I wasn't at this point concerned about having a Fairy type that was like super solid. I had other answers to Dark types, not many, but I had enough where I was like, I need to just make sure I have answers to the other types that I know I'm going to be scaled otherwise. So, yeah, that is Clefairy. And that leaves us with our final Pokemon. Now, if you kind of have gathered, we went low. Rotom was 5 points, Clefairy was 2 points, so if you can do maths, that means we've got 11 points left. Now, we could get multiple Pokemon here, but I felt it was important to make sure I got a Pokemon that I thought was going to help really patch up the team. Originally, I wasn't even going to draft this, a type of this Pokemon, but I thought with the loss of Weezing, there's no other poison type I want, like, for the points that I can afford. I even miscalculated. I had a backup that was more expensive than my point total, and I didn't even realize, so, I was able to get this Pokemon, thankfully, and that Pokemon, it's once again a callback, it's Entei. Entei is a Pokemon I used back in Season 1, was one of my free agencies, even. And oh boy, did it impress me. I wanted a Fire type that could be used offensively or defensively. Now, while the defenses don't look too impressive, the massive 115 HP certainly helps carry it a bit. A Fire type was not even something I was considering at this point. Once I knew I was locking in Mega Blastoise, I had no reason to draft a Fire type. My original plan before Weezing got taken was to get Weezing, Alchemy, and Rotom Fan. But once Weezing went, I realized I need to make sure I've got answers to Ice types and Fairy types. and that means I need a good fire type. The downside is I know that's going to make me more ground weak. With having Jirachi and Terrakion at the upper end, I knew I was going to make me more weak to ground, which is scary, but I thankfully only have these 3 as ground weaknesses, whereas I have 2 flying types and Serena to help kind of patch things out. So, Entei is a Pokemon, as I say, the last time I used it actually really impressed me. I think I only brought it a couple of times, one of which just didn't work because I ended up misreading the matchup, and the other one it put in a shift. Yeah, one of those, the first week I actually ended up bringing it was literally like sub-toxic. But that was me misreading the matchup and thinking it was going to be a really defensive matchup. Turns out it was very aggressive. And then the other one, in which it put in a shift, was just straight up Life Orb offensive. It's got 100 speed. That's the same as Jirachi, so it gives this team a bit more of a speed that it wouldn't have otherwise. Something I was concerned with was, like, the lack of damage output that, like, the team was going to be putting out on a consistent basis. And Entei is a Pokemon that can do that. And not only that, let's talk about, like, the main move, the big move itself, Sacred Fire. One of the best offensive moves in the game. More powerful than, pretty much, like, more powerful than Flamethrower, a little bit less powerful than Flare Blitz, which I believe it gets, but it gets a 50% chance to burn, which means switching to Sacred Fire are few and far between. You're looking at pretty much bulky water types, which is pretty much the main thing that Entei will struggle with. Water types was a concern for the team, but we've got defensive switchings like Mega Blastoise and Serena can also put on the offensive pressure alongside Rotom Fan. We've also got Dragapult that will love switching into water type hits really nicely. So, we've got all that. Sacred Fire is a scary move, and you know what's better? The last time I used Entei, I had a friggin' Finny on my team, and I hated it. I'm still, like, salty about the fact that I picked Finny, and it was the worst thing I could have done in GSC Season 1. But this time I don't have to worry about that, so no Hexbolt is a perfectly viable set, and we can actually spam Sacred Fire, and things are actually going to burn this time. Entei gets really nice coverage as well. Stomping Tantrum is a nice move to have. I also had, don't have to mess around with trying to guess if it has Stomping Tantrum, which I had to do in the past, which was weird. But, it has Stomping Tantrum for the ground coverage if it needs it. But more notably, it gets Stone Edge, it gets E-Speed, which really helps pick things off. Iron Head. Some pretty solid coverage all around. But with the base 115 attack and Sacred Fire / Flare Blitz, it's going to be hitting really hard. Even on bulkier sets, because I knew as a fire type, it was going to have to play a bulkier role at times. Because of the top end Fairy weakness and the top end Ice weakness. Well, I guess not top end Ice weakness, but a lot of Ice weaks. So, that was going to have to be an issue that Entei would have to help resolve, which is why I wanted to make sure I had a good fire type. Originally my backup was going to be Darmanitan. Darmanitan was 1 point more, and I didn't realize I was out of points. So, I would have had to, kind of finagle things and try and make sure I got Darm and Grace if I ended up having to, if I needed to get Darmanitan. But, yeah, Entei is a Pokemon that I'm excited to use once again. Again, we've had quite a few callbacks to GSC Season 1. 4 of the 10 Pokemon on this team I actually used in GSC Season 1. And then some Pokemon, a Pokemon I've learned that I've liked over time. Pokemon like Mega Blastoise and Mudsdale and Jirachi. And then the rest are all kind of, and I guess Rotom Fan, I guess, to an extent. Rotom Forms in general is something I'm going to like. And then only other couple of Pokemon that don't really fall into that category are Terrakion and Clefairy. Clefairy is a Pokemon that I've just been told is very good and people pick a lot. I think it's very rare that Clefairy gets undrafted in a league. And Terrakion is a Pokemon that I felt like just really paired well with Dragapult. So, that is the full team. We can see the full team on the actual dock. So, here's the full team on the GSC dock. You also get, you can see where the points are all distributed. You can see it, again, it leans towards this top end. Top end, the 6 technical top ends are going to be Dragapult, Jirachi, Terrakion, Mandibles, Mega Blastoise, and Entei. But filling out those of reasonable Pokemon, I would say, are Mudsdale, Serena, and Rotom Fan. Clefairy I can't see bringing that much, but it's still there. And has its use in certain matchups. But again, it's a Dragapult draft, it's going to lean towards the top end more likely, just because that is the way that Dragapult drafts have to lean in general. Especially because you tend to pick a really strong fighting type, Mandibuzz and Dragapult. That's 3 Fairy Weeks off the bat, you've really got to make up for that somewhere, and that's why we've got Jirachi at that top end and Entei on the upper end as well, to help make up for the fact that of the Fairy weakness. It's obviously things like Triple Ground Weak at the top end, but then we've got 2 immunities, no resist. So, we can see it more on here, we can see it on the Bullhawk dock. You can kind of see... Where's the weaknesses? Where's the weaknesses? Type chart? Yeah, here we go. Ice, Ghost, and Fairy are the main ones. Ghost, pretty much it's going to be Mandibuzz holding us down. But thankfully it's not too many other Ghost types. It's pretty much Spectria and Gengar are going to be the main ones. So, but Ice and Fairy I knew were going to be an issue. We have 5 Ice Weeks. So, and you know, that's not great. Granted, 2 of those are 2 flying types that aren't always going to be brought. But Ice also just hits for a lot of different things. So, obviously it hits our ground and our grass type as well. So, and then Fairies, again, as I said, we're going to have some top end stuff weak to Fairy. You know, the main 3 of Dragapult, Terrakion, and Mandibuzz. And then the 2 resists. So, it's not great, but... And there's obviously gaping holes in the team in certain places. So, but I feel like those gaping holes can be made up for with just looking at these kind of stats. I think a fairly reasonable thing to do, you can see the stats as they are right now. A fairly reasonable thing to do is actually just go over here, see some of the other teams I've kind of looked at. And actually just remove Clefairy to give you a better idea on what the team actually looks like in terms of stats, because Clefairy brings it down a lot because it's, you know, it's a not fully evolved Pokemon. And you can really see the numbers increase here. The relatively high bulk on both physical and defensive side. The super high attack stat, which isn't quite representative of the team due to Dragapult mostly going special, Jirachi being mixed. But other than that, it is definitely more of a physically offensive team. But at the top end, it still kind of goes between the two. Entei can technically go special if it needs to for certain matchups, but for the most part, that's going to be physical as well. But yeah, it definitely leans towards on the physical side. And oh boy, do the physical attackers go physical. The team hits like a truck, it's really bulky as well. The speeds are actually pretty high. The average speed is 89. Which granted is going to be like, you know, it's tops off for Dragapult, but honestly, and then it's brought down by Mudsdale. But even still, that's relatively high, like, speed for a team. Just because I've got nothing below Serena until Mudsdale, which granted is a big speed gap. But Pokemon that are going to be, you know, base 60 or lower, which is kind of like a decent range of like 65, so things like Pelipper, Sylveon, what's it called? Primarina, things like that nature, aren't going to really run max speed anyway, because they're, you know, bulkier Pokemon. I guess Serena and Sylveon can, but against my team, it's not really going to be something they're going to have to, or going to want to do, unless they're scarfing themselves into something. Just because my team is actually quite fast, and the thing is, it's not too big of a gap between the pieces. You know, it's it's 6 points between Serena and Blastoise, a couple points between those and Mandibuzz, and then going up to Rotom Van, and then it goes up to Entei and Jirachi speed side 100, and then 108, and then the big jump up to Dragapult. So, I am quite happy with this team. Obviously, it's got its flaws, but I think Dragapult teams tend to have flaws at times. They always have to lose out on something due to being top end. This time we lost out on some of the extra resistances. I had to pick up extra ice weaknesses as a result. I'm not a fan of honestly picking up a rock type because it adds a million weaknesses to the team. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy. You can see the hazards. You know, we've got four rockers because Clefairy isn't included in this, and then 4 forms of removal as well. No extra hazards though. It's only rocks. I would like more because it would make more use of the rapid spin, but I couldn't justify anything else. The only other thing I could justify was training out Clefairy for like a low tier sticky weather, and I just couldn't. I need the actual fairy type itself, so to actually perform an actual role instead of being a suicide lead, like hazard setter. So, but yeah, that is gonna be it. Let's put Clefairy back in. Right, Clefairy. That is the full team. Dragapult, Jirachi, Mandibuzz, Terrakion, Mudsdale, Mega Blastoise, Serena, Rotom-Fan, Clefairy, and Entei. So, really happy with the team overall, especially because I had to kind of once a snipe happened, I had to drastically change my plan. So I had to drastically change what I was doing twice during this draft, which is why I don't like being first pick. Generally, because like or just wheel picks in general, because it means I really have to change what I'm doing on the fly. Not something I'm the best at, so. But I think we made this team work quite well, and hopefully I can make up for some of the glaring weaknesses with the team and put on an impressive performance. Obviously, the goal is always to make playoffs, and if we do that in this division, I'll be happy. So, that will do it. Thank you very much for watching. Sorry this one took so long. I did not expect it to go so long, but here we are. So I'll not waste any more of your time, and I'll see you guys for the matches. So take it easy, everyone, and peace.